without further ado, there we go. Just a bit about me. I'm Jo McGrath. I'm from Sector 3. Just a little bit about Sector 3, where we are Stockport's local infrastructure organisation, and we were set up for the sector and by the sector to offer support and guidance to Stockport's thriving VCSE sector. You can follow us on Twitter at Sector3 SK, and we've now got a website which is work in progress, so please bear with us, but it's got some information on there. And you can also sign up. We do a weekly bulletin which gives information on funding opportunities and other opportunities to collaborate with one another and events. I've also in my team got the support of Simone Callaghan. She's working on community development, and Helena Banfield, who's looking at our marketing and communications. The presentation will be available to you after this event, so I'll send out the slides, okay? Additional support in Stockport for funding and support around your organisation is available as well from Stockport Council, Thad Barker, and Stockport Local Fund Manager. He's great at helping navigate the funding labyrinth, and he's very good at supporting people with bids, etc. And so is Mark Rogers from Stockport Homes, so there's some contact details there should you need them. Right, now, welcome Kaylin and Georgie. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Jo, and thanks everyone for joining us. So I am Kaylin. I am the funder manager in the Great Manchester team, for the National Lottery Community Fund. Georgie's also joined us. I'll let Georgie introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Georgie, and I, like you probably know, cover Stockport and Tameside in the Great Manchester team.
So yeah, Georgie's one of our funding officers. So she's helping distribute the Coronavirus Community Support, which is our new fund, which has been going for about a month, which is a collaboration between us and us and government. So I'll go through a few things. I'll generally try and skip through a lot of it. There's a lot of the stuff which is already on the website, and obviously I think the Q&A is one of the most important bits. So we'll try and get through quite quickly. Just the normal sort of warnings about the fact that I live with other people and they will potentially at some point join unintendedly. So yeah, apologies for that if that does happen. So yeah, we're going to go through what we want to fund, who we can fund, and how to apply. So we can move to the next slide now. So yes, the Coronavirus Community Support Fund is a joint response to distribute both government and National Lottery emergency funding. It was launched on the 22nd of May. The whole pot of funding is around £200 million. It's obviously, the time limit hasn't been set yet. It's just open at the moment, but it will close at some point. It's once the funding is gone, it will be gone. We will provide some sort of deadlines about when things are going to close, but at the moment it is open. But if you do need funding, I would recommend coming in for funding because we don't know how long it will last for right now. We can fund activities supporting people and communities affected by COVID-19. So that's sort of project activity and delivery stuff, but also I think a really important thing which we can support you with is organisations who are experiencing acute financial difficulties as a result of the pandemic. So we know a lot of organisations have been struggling, whose income has massively been cut because of the crisis. And so yeah, we have been using a lot of reserves potentially and are under threat of closure in some cases. So we are here to support that, specifically that as well. The funding is up to £100,000. We can go above that if there's an organisation who potentially is working across multiple areas, and that seems more appropriate, but generally the majority of funding will be up to £100,000. The funding needs to be spent in 6 months funding. It's sort of emergency funding through us and the government, so yeah, 6 months. Just so you're aware, the funding will, once this funding is gone, we will be having National Lottery funding, which will continue, which will look more at the sort of rebuild or recovery. There's a lot of work going on about that at the moment, but we haven't got any sort of clear announcements on that. But once we do, it will be there sort of on the website and publicised. just to say before we go to the next slide, just that we are already heavily oversubscribed, so it is really busy, but we still want to encourage applications because we want organisations are struggling and need support. I think in Stockport in particular, it's not quite as high, the applications, and so that's one of the reasons why we're doing a session today. But just be aware that it's no guarantee of funding. I know you probably all are, and have applied for lots of pots of funding before. It is a very competitive process. Bearing that in mind, just apply for what you need. We want to fund as many organisations as possible. So you can only apply once for funding. So if you're successful, that is your pot of funding, that's it, you can't reapply. If you're unsuccessful, that is also your only attempt, unfortunately. This is to try and manage some of the demand, and it's sort of an agreement with us and government. Organisations that can apply, it's all on the website, so I won't go through, but it's just the sort of standard, the usual suspects. We can fund partnership applications, but this would count as the lead partner's opportunity to apply. It wouldn't be the same for the delivery partners, they could reapply, but unfortunately the lead partner, it would be their sort of one application. And we know that's not ideal, but that's part of the sort of requirements at the moment with government. Basically, we can sort of skip through a bit of this, but just all I'd say is it's just general usual eligibility criteria. We'll share the slides, and you can see it on the website as well. And the only difference to our usual eligibility criteria is that we no longer are funding schools and statutory bodies with this funding. So who we want to fund, I think there's sort of 3 priority groups which we want to fund. This is the first one, which is organisations supporting people and communities who experience disproportionate challenge and difficulty as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. We're very aware, as I'm sure all of you are, about the disproportionate impact that COVID's having on some communities, and so we're prioritising our support to people and communities most affected by the pandemic. I think this includes disabled people, Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities in particular, but also we'll be supporting organisations who are supporting older people. We recognise how important it is to support those families who are living in poverty on lower incomes, who are facing increased hardship. And also working with homeless people and organisations supporting vulnerable children and young people. The second, not sure if that's loaded. So the next one is organisations providing services and support for vulnerable people, for which there'll be increased demand as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. So focusing on specific issues which have arisen as a result of COVID-19. I think there's some examples there. For example, organisations providing food and basic essentials to those who are shielding, organisations working to prevent domestic abuse and violence, organisations supporting people and their families with end-of-life care, and organisations who support people experiencing poor mental health and well-being. And those 2 are funded through the government funding, and this final is maybe less relevant for some of you, but is funded through our own funding. It's supporting organisations which connect communities, work together in response to COVID-19. And this is particularly sort of infrastructure support and capacity building. We know how important that role is in the sector, especially during the pandemic when incomes have dropped and we need to potentially think about new income generation, sort of the new data and technology capabilities which are needed. So yeah, we have been funding a few infrastructure organisations, and I would encourage you to utilise your infrastructure organisation. So this is sort of going over mainly what we've already looked at. So we like to encourage applications from organisations that support these groups. And in particular, we want to support organisations led by people who have lived experiences of the issues that they're trying to address. So yeah, this one, if your project does work with children, young people, or vulnerable adults, you need to have a proper safeguarding policy in place. So just be aware of that. And you also have to comply with our safeguarding policy. We obviously understand that with COVID-19, there's new ways of working online, there's new volunteers, and you need to make sure that policies, practices, and staff training are all up to date. What you can spend the money on, this again is all on the website. We'll share the slides, so I won't go through it all, but I think the key thing is minimal requirements related to PPE. We can fund PPE, we can't fund it at mass scale generally, but we can sort of fund minimal requirements of PPE, cleaning adaptations to buildings to meet social distancing standards, to get yourselves ready to reopen if you plan to return to face-to-face contact within the 6-month period.
Yep.
What we can't fund, again, same as ever, so you can see that on the website. What we can't fund is sort of large requests for PPE and those cleaning and adaptation to buildings which are beyond government requirements. Okay, so this is how to apply. You can look at the website for a bit more guidance and information. All applications should go through the website unless you have a specific communication need. Information that you need to apply includes sort of stuff here. Again, we can share this, but contact details for 2 different people from your organisation. So your name, email address, telephone numbers, things like that. Details about your organisation, type of organisation, and then we'll also ask some questions about the actual proposal itself. So there's 6 questions there about how your work will involve the community, how your project fits with local activities, who will benefit from your project, the difference your project will make, how much money you'll need, and for what for, and how long do you need the money for. So if you want to go through any of those during the Q&A, yeah, feel free to ask. One thing I would say just on that is, I think the first question about how your work will involve your community, generally the lottery is really focused on this idea of people in the lead, the idea that people who benefit or have a meaningful say in the organisation through consultation or through decision making. We're aware that there's going to be limitations to that during this crisis, and will have been. And so we're not necessarily asking you what consultation have you done for this specific project, but more about what your organisation does in general. Because yeah, we know that it is difficult to do some of those sort of more in-depth, longer-term work around consultation and co-production. So yeah, if your application is eligible, we'll receive your application if it's eligible and it fits well with our priorities. We'll ask some follow-up questions, which are listed here. These are sort of need a little bit more detail and are through government requirements as well. So yeah, you do ask for a bit about information about how many volunteers, how many staff, and the proposed budget, recent bank statement. We do ask a bit more information about your financial situation, and a cash flow forecast for the next 6 months if you're applying for over 50,000. Once you've had all the information processed, it goes through our decision-making process. It'll be seen by a local team, a national lottery panel, and also it'll be seen by a DCMS panel. Currently the wait time is around 6 weeks. We're trying to go as fast as we can, but we are oversubscribed. We've got a lot of applications, so just try and bear with us, really.
6 weeks.
If you're successful, so we return your offer letter we'll send you an offer letter which you should return within a week, and you can start your grant within a month of the date on your letter. The full grant amount will be usually made within 1 payment on the week of the start date. In regards to sort of like the monitoring, it's going to be very, very light touch. The government wants an evaluation, but the only sort of information you'll be really asked is how many people you reached, how many volunteers you worked with, what you did, and what difference the funding has made. So it'll be fairly light touch. So yeah, if you want any more information, we'll ask in the Q&A section. but also there is the link to our website. We've got an advice line as well, and if you want to contact us directly in the Northwest, there's an email address there too.